This is about 10 years ago. I was in my native place enjoying my summer vacation, playing cricket and the likes. I was with my cousin and I used to go play with his friends. All of them were around 17 to 18 years old. One day I found out that they had an Ouija board, that they would have the occasional sessions at a boy's home after a game. I asked them if I could join and they let me. At the time I knew that it was a hoax, but was curious anyway as to what they were up to. I was also doubting if they were thinking about pranking me. A few ground rules were established and I sat down and repeated the prayers that I was told. We were 5 sitting in a circle. This was a homemade board made of paper. A small candle was lit and a sheet of glass was placed over it, and we all placed our index fingers on it. I was giggling at times seeing all this set up, fully convinced that nothing was going to happen. They began to whisper, "Good spirits, please come," and soon the glass started shaking and moving. A sudden chill went through my spine and I wasn't ready to comprehend what had happened. They began asking questions and asked it to confirm its presence by coming back to the center. I'm not going to give the details on the spirit, as I'm forbidden to talk about it. There were some resident spirits they usually call and ask silly questions like, who does the beautiful girl on their street like among them, etc. In the middle of this, my logical brain became suspicious of all of this and doubted whether the guys were moving it on their own. In saying that, I do believe that I knew that the whole thing was real. But either way, I had to find out, so I proposed a test. I said that we'll all lean on the glass and vertically press it down, putting our full strength on the glass and see if the spirit is able to move it. They also were quite excited about the experiment. The glass started jerking and shifting slightly as if the paper was about to tear. There was no way any of us could move it sideways with the force that we're putting down on top of it. Now, after all these years, I have not really come here to share the excitement of the experience, but to share what followed. Following this, many unfortunate incidents began happening in the family that we used to play the Ouija board with. Firstly, he said there was never peace or happiness in his house like earlier. His father also died a few years later. None of us were able to prosper or live a happy life, even to today. Distressingly, I played on with my friends back home after a few years, but there was a point when I realized that I should never play it again. So I stopped. Now, I know this hasn't been a really long story, but a lot of the things that happened and have happened to me since, I truly do believe are strongly related to this Ouija board experience. Kia ora kouā. Grim here. Today we're going to be listening to 6 Ouija board stories, and we will have an hour of ambient wind following behind. Today, and the next story you're about to hear, is narrated by the amazing Dark Somnium. So, continue to listen and enjoy.
To start, I'm pretty well versed in the supernatural at this point, from a technical and personal standpoint. I know how to protect myself and everything. My favorite time, yet definitely the scariest, using the Ouija board, was actually my most recent. It was a few weeks ago at a friend's party. What started out as the most interesting and in-depth relationship with any spirit so far ended up scaring the few of us that were still there. It wasn't my board this time, but a commercial one, the kind sold as a board game. It was a lot bigger than mine, which was good since more people were playing. We had gone through a couple of sessions already, meeting a 14-year-old boy who had drowned, someone who said 69 and then left, giving us a hearty laugh, and possibly a demon who we immediately closed contact with and cleansed the room. "One more time," my friend Maria said. We started the game in Spanish, like we had been, since we figured people who had died here in Mexico would speak Spanish, but this time, the answers didn't make a lot of sense. "Would you prefer to speak in English?" Maria asked. "Yes," the board replied. So we started from the top, me asking the questions. He was a man, 41 years old, who died in 1952. He only gave his name as D, but made it clear that was not his real name. He had died from, in his words, GUN in Maria's building, but luckily not her floor. He was Canadian, but had lived in Mexico during his life. "What brought you down here?" I asked. WORK. "What job?" S. "I bet he's a spy," my friend Andrea interrupted. E. "Or a secretary." X. We all sat in silence a second. "A boy. Were you a pimp?" My friend Lero asked. "Yes." Wow. Well, here we were, talking to a dead Canadian pimp from the 50s. My friend asked him some questions about if he thought he was wrong in that. He basically said that women were goats. Ouch. Lero, being a good guy, started lecturing D on how coercing young women into sex isn't moral and all that. This was the funniest part. Without prompting, the planchette began moving again, very, very quickly from S to H to shut up. Yeah, that's right, folks. A ghost told my friend to shut up. I quickly punched Lero with my free hand. "Yeah, Leo, shut up." Andrea asked D if he liked Lero. No. Sophia, a sweet girl who had been afraid, asked if he liked her. Yes. She was touched, until we reminded her that D was a middle-aged pimp. We asked if D had been killed because of his job. Yes. If it was lonely in the afterlife. No. If he had friends there. No. If he had enemies there. Yes. If the person who killed him was there with him. Yes. Bummer, but it was time for cake, so we bid him farewell. A few hours later, most of the guests had gone. It was just me, Maria, and our pal Pharrell. We decided to play a couple of more rounds before Pharrell and I had to leave. When we got another yes from the invitational question, we asked the spirit's name as usual. D. "Is this the same D we spoke to earlier?" Pharrell asked. "Yes." "Nice to see you again," I said. We talked to him for a while longer. His favorite color was purple. I asked him where he grew up. "I don't know." "You don't know where you grew up?" Maria asked. "Yes." "Did you forget?" "Yes." "Do you remember your parents?" I asked. "No." "Oh, I'm sorry. Is it hard to remember things in the afterlife?" "Yes." "What do you remember?" WIFE. The three of us collectively awed at that. "What's her name?" IDON. "You don't remember?" interrupted Maria. "Yes." "Sad, right?" "What do you remember about her?" HAIR. He had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, the daughter older. He didn't remember their names either, but this is where it got a little scary for us. We had talked for a while now, and it was late. We had exhausted most topics. Maria decided to ask, "Is there anything you wanted to talk about?" Life. Wow. Do you want us to help you remember your life? I asked. Yes. How do we do that? Maria asked. OUT. We stopped, looking at each other. You never let a spirit out, no matter what. I'm sorry, D, I said. We can't do that. Yes, he answered. No, Maria backed me up. We can't let you out. I'm sorry. NOW, came the reply. Yeah, no. We were done at this point. Shaken up. We're going to say goodbye now, D, but it's been really good to meet you. The planchette nearly flew over to no. Yeah, Pharrell said. We're going now. Goodbye. We manually moved the planchette through goodbye, seeing as D probably wouldn't have helped us with that. Shaking, we ended the session and lit white candles to cleanse the room. It was freaky, but by far the most interesting experience I've ever had.
It all starts with 3 rules that you have to follow when you are playing an Ouija board. 1. Don't play in a graveyard. 2. Don't play alone. And 3. Always say goodbye. So, one day my mum came home with an Ouija board. It was from a thrift store, she said, and she thought maybe I would like to use it. I told her she had to come because I couldn't play alone, but she said it was nonsense. So, that night, with my mum in the kitchen and me darkening the entire living room, I contacted a spirit. Their name was Carter. I asked him how it felt to die, and he said cold and dark and lonely. And that's when I noticed how cold the room had gotten. My mum was also not there anymore, probably upstairs doing the laundry. So I asked Carter if he would harm me if getting the chance. Carter didn't reply, so I pushed the board away from me and went to check on my mum. I didn't say goodbye. I was frightened that Carton would hurt my mum, so I went upstairs. My mum was about to walk downstairs as I scurried in our little hall. When she went back into the kitchen, I continued the game, but it had moved and it had said yes. So I put the board away in such a hurry that I forgot to say goodbye. Again. I never noticed anything weird after that except the whispers. I'd hear something sometimes near me. I was an only child, but was less scared if I blamed my mum, so I did. Until one afternoon she didn't come home, and the whispers happened again. I stopped hearing them, but then other weird things started happening, like plates, glasses, forks, knives, spoons, and more falling down from the counter, or doors opening by themselves, or the floor creaking while there was no one walking. I tried convincing my mother that there were ghosts, but she said that the house was too old and I shouldn't be believing such things. Well, eventually we moved out because a door fell out of its frame, and my mum said that it was the house being so ancient and that we needed a younger one. But I knew that she was scared too. After moving, I have hated Ouija boards, but I sometimes use them when getting curious about the other side. However, nowadays, I never forget to say goodbye. First off, I love this question. I was that high school emo girl with the Ouija board permanently in the trunk of her car to play with any of our adventurous nighttime forest excursions. We also have about 5 extremely old and run-down cemeteries within 20 miles of my small PA town. I was well aware of the rules of the board and was very knowledgeable, so definitely not just some dumb kid who liked to be scared. So, my story. I was around 18, and on one of our I'm bored, let's go explore Berkeley Cemetery excursions, better yet, let's plan to be there till midnight. A little bit of backstory. Berkeley was a mining town during the 1900s. It was wiped out by diphtheria. Reports of residents being buried alive to contain the spread. All that creepy stuff. The cemetery at that point was a wooden archway with Berkeley carved into it. Run down, tipped over broken gravestones and the leftover rock foundation of a small church. The graves were also raised due to the ground settling and many holes dug by animals, often right in front of gravestones. So, anyway, me and about 2 carloads of friends showed up armed with flashlights. We were early. It was not midnight yet, so we walked around, giggling and scaring each other. The cemetery was always silent, and there was no noise, no animals to be heard. It really sets the tone as a creepy place. We found a knocked-over column-type gravestone that we thought would make a perfect table for our Ouija board. As you approach the table, the writing is not visible. To our back is the forest where the church foundation remains. We set up our board. My best friend and I sit on either side, our backs to the forest facing the entrance. We start with the typical, "Is there anyone there?" It answers, "Yes." We ask, "What's your name?" It replies, "Sarah." We ask, "How old are you?" It replies, 23. We asked, "Were you married?" It replied, "Yes." We asked, "Any kids?" It replied, "Yes, 1." At this point, we hear footsteps, 2 steps specifically, coming from behind. Everyone is in front of us with flashlights pointed at the board. First flashlight dies. That friend is done. F this, and back to the car she goes. We continue. We ask a few more random questions, get answers. 2 more steps are taken towards us. We hear leaves rustle and a stick break. The footsteps stop. We look, shine lights, there's nothing. We start whispering amongst ourselves, speculating. As we are looking towards the forest, 2 more steps. Honestly, it felt and sounded like a curious kid who was afraid to get too close. To best describe, that's exactly what those steps sounded like. Okay, well, now they are too close, so we say goodbye to Sarah. We have succeeded in getting our scare, but as we're about to run back to the car, I'm curious whose grave we were sitting on. The name faces the forest. We couldn't see it when we sat down. My best friend and I go to check it out, wary of the curious ghost kid spying on us. Gravestone reads, Sarah Stange, wife of Maurice Stange, 23, at death, mother. Had baby's birth and death date, one date. baby did not live more than one day. Our board had all the information correct. We had not visited the stone before. Generally, we stayed clear of the church area. We legged it to the car and got out of there. I've been back many times, and I always take note to visit Sarah. Her stone is now upright and very well taken care of. Please note, all names have been changed for our confidentiality purposes. Now, this story to me is terrifying, so please, bear with me. So, my friends and I, being curious and young, decided to play in a Ouija board in winter of 2018, after we started our freshman year of high school. We hadn't been able to get our hands on a real one because the roads were too icy to drive on and none of us had one at home that we could bring. So, naturally, we made our own. We thought we were absolutely hilarious for making our poster board a Ouija board as an artsy as possible design, writing every letter in poor calligraphy and decorating the sides with a pastel border. We had a shitty handmade board, and it was the middle of the afternoon in Texas on a snow day. Not many of us thought it would work. Not really. I was telling myself it was going to be bullshit because I was still vulnerable from my dad's passing a few months prior to this incident. But because of that vulnerability, I let myself have a little bit of hope that I was going to get to talk to my dad that afternoon. We lit some Bath and Body Works candles and sat on the shaggy silver rug in the middle of my bedroom. Each of us placed 2 fingers on the drinking glass we had put on the board. The drinking glass that used to be my dad's. It was his favorite. He'd mix Coca-Cola with whiskey in that cup, and I knew what I was doing when I picked that for our planchette. A designated speaker/asker was chosen, and we were to feed her questions to ask the spirits should they decide to appear. We started the session with joking around about my door ghost, as my bedroom door likes to fully slam out of nowhere and seems to have been possessed. The idea of there being a ghost that haunts my door is a running joke with my friends and I. We asked the board if anyone was there, and it replied yes. We asked if it was my door ghost, and it replied yes. We then got the letters AHB, and when we asked its name, and frankly I think that it might have been the spirit that came next, testing us to see if the board worked, as that's not out of character for my dad. There was a short spell where the line went dead, for lack of a better term. The board stopped talking, so we slid the glass over goodbye and promised to come back and play again after eating lunch. So we headed downstairs, ate lunch, and came back to see if any new spirits wanted to say hello. Our speaker asked if anyone was there, and the board replied yes. I felt my chest grow warm with that little bit of hope I allowed myself to keep. The speaker asked the spirit's name, and the glass slid smoothly to the letter H and started upwards to the U. When I felt my stomach drop because my father's name was Hunter. My friends asked me what was wrong, if I was okay, if I wanted to stop. I firmly told them no, and that I was fine and that I wanted to keep going. I told the speaker to ask if the spirit was my dad. The word yes was magnified as our shaky fingers followed the tug of the glass to the letter in the corner of the makeshift board. I looked at everyone and I said, if one of you guys is fucking with me, it's not funny. I remember snapping at my friends and they insisted that they weren't, and I believed them. But I wanted to prove that this was really my dad. So I asked, what was my nickname when I was a baby? Immediately the glass slid to the letters S, then Q. That was when I started to cry. Squirmy, I said aloud, meeting my friend's concerned stares. He's saying squirmy. It is my dad, guys. I couldn't barely speak through my tears. I asked Beth, our designated speaker, to tell him I missed him so much. Tell him I love him. She repeated what I'd said, then asked if Dad had anything to say to his daughter. My friend said each letter aloud as my dad glided the glass over our pastel poster board. I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. I love you too, I cried. I love you so much, Daddy. I miss you. I love you. I miss you. I was crying so hard, shaking at this point, and my friend asked if I was ready to stop. I nodded, and we ended the session with a swift goodbye. Who knew a piece of poster board we coloured in pastel could serve as a portal to the afterlife and make me cry? The Ouija board is an open doorway to every demon around. Little do people realize this. There are those who truly don't believe this. Well, my grandson played the Ouija board in his room. He has woke himself up screaming. He says he sees green eyes staring at him, demons crawling across his floor, and Satan asking him to bow down to him. The only way he says the haunting will stop. Even a succubus has attacked him. The succubus are female demons who use sex to get to you. It's terrorizing. He's woken me up numerous times. I prayed over him, spoke in tongue, and anointed him with holy oils. These games are really dangerous. He still has nightmares. He's going on 23 now. He's attempted to end his life numerous times to eliminate the terror. Needless to say, he is now seeing a psychiatric therapist, and he needs to be on medication. Please, avoid these at all cost. They tried burning it. Flames shot 6 to 8 feet in the air. They're screaming like nothing human. No matter what we have done, we have not been able to get rid of this fucking Ouija board. And my grandson has to suffer. That was the final story. So please enjoy an hour of ambient wind.